Okay, welcome to Watercolor Studio 42. Today I'm going to be doing a tree, a special tree, Christmas tree, if you will. And of course they're usually a pine or a spruce or whatever tree. And basically they're triangular in shape, triangular. And if you get one that's almost a perfect tree, like we have, we've got one of those trees at home where you have to assemble it. It comes in two sections, and you put it in the stand and so forth. And all the branches, all the different levels of the branches have to be inserted into the center pole. And so it takes a little while to put it together, but I have it pretty well organized. So I have the sections numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4, goes up to about 12 different sections. I call the sections levels where the branches spread out. And of course, the base is wide, and then it tapers up to a point pretty much at the top. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to kind of show you how this kind of works. Remember, I said something about the pole. And so you have a stand. You have just a regular, I guess, stand for anything. It could be a Christmas tree stand. And then we usually put a little, almost like you could use probably a white bed sheet or something and place around it. We got one of those real fancy ones, But anyways, I'm going to start off. Now, the widest part of the tree is at the base, the longest branches, and because of the weight of the branch itself, outside in nature, it's usually weighted down a little bit because when we have ice and snow that settles on to those larger limbs, they kind of droop a little bit. So I'm just going to put some of these in with my marker, and we're going to bring it out to here. It's going to be something like this. The base is about that wide. And as we come up, we're going to kind of stay within that triangle. I made the triangle kind of light, just enough for myself to see it. I'm just filling in here. And as you get towards the top of the tree, of course, the little branches, they don't weigh too much, and they kind of stand up. So they start reaching up this way. They go out this way until you get to the very point. Something like, can you see this triangle, though, that I have, how that works? I'm just going to fill it in a little bit in through here. And then you got the trunk that goes down into the stand, tree stand, and then we'll decorate it with a little carpet underneath. I'm using an extra white bleached watercolor paper today so that the white shows up a lot more. You'd be amazed at how with a regular watercolor paper, sometimes the color is kind of not, it's an off-white, almost an ivory color, some of the papers that I have. So this is pretty much the way it would look. Now, I start off, when I decorate the tree, I start off with the bulbs and so forth. And I start with the larger ones, and then as you go up towards the top of the tree, the smaller little bulbs and so forth, the ornaments and so forth. And so everything starts from the bottom when I build a tree, and the branches go into insert. It's like I said, it's probably an older tree. It goes back. I don't even know if they have them similar to that today. Sometimes now they have them on a hinge that you can actually fold the branches down and then pop them up. Once you set it into the stand, you can pop the tree up in no time. It takes me a little while to build. Literally, I build a tree. Okay, so this is what we have. Now, you can get the idea of the shape, the triangle, and then what I'm going to do next is start off. I'm going to use probably I could get away with probably a 1/2 inch flat brush today, and moisten that. And I'm going to mix some, get some green going here. And what I do is mix some of my blues with my yellow and get different shades of green. The more blues you put into the yellow, the darker the green. So what I'm going to do here is start pretty much with some of these lines and just kind of fill it in. You can go out, when you fill it in, you can go from a wider brush stroke and just turn it a little bit or lift up and it goes out to a point more. See what I'm dropping? And I'm leaving a lot of white in there so that I'll have room to put in some of the, that's the thing with watercolor. You can't put a light color on top of dark because it just mellows in. It just kind of blends in too much. But we'll come up here. Now you're starting to see the tree. You're starting to see more or less the shape of the tree. And let's see, put a couple more little dabs in here. Go out. Now, as I go along, I could fill this in a little bit more. Let's go up a little bit to the top there. That kind of ends up at somewhat of a point. And then as you go along, you can kind of fill more in. But I'm leaving a lot of white in there to some of the colors of the ornaments. Now, you can use all sorts of ornaments, and of course the most common, I guess, is the circle, the a round ball shape. And so that's what I usually start with. And then you have all these other little ornaments that you can put on the tree. My gosh, I've got boxes and boxes. If I put every ornament on the tree, you might not see the tree. Sometimes, it gets a little bit too crowded as far as the lights go. Now, normally, the next thing after you build the tree, in my case, I have to put all those things together. After that, then you put the lights on. Now, you build a tree from the bottom, but when you put the lights on, I start from the top and spiral down the tree. I spiral down with the lights. And you have to kind of catch every branch there. You can't kind of leave it too open. And you spiral down until you get to the bottom. Usually I can put about 3 sets of lights on, about 150 bulbs on, I guess, each set of lights. So you end up with quite a few, around 300 bulbs on your tree sometimes. I think I've got 4 sets of lights, but usually I end up only using 3. Because by the time I get to the bottom, I don't have much room to hang drape any more wire with the bulbs. So here we go. Now, I've got this in pretty well. Now, the thing is, I've got a little card here that has some bulbs and star shapes and whatnot, mostly circular shapes and so forth. But they've used a little bit of blue, and they've used some red bulbs, and they show up a little bit. And some of the are lighter, so I call them bulbs. They're balls. But anyways, here we go. I'm going to start off with some reds today, and I can use a flat brush. A little bit, but you might want to, if you work on this yourself, you may want to put some, use a sort of a round brush. I kind of do it this way, kind of make a half a circle and fill in the other half. But you can decorate the tree pretty much, and this way. The shapes don't have to be absolutely perfect. I mean, it's a painting. So sometimes you can make it almost photographic, make the perfect circles and so forth. But in this case, I'm just making it more suggestive. Now, usually as I go up higher, I make the, I don't make them, but I hang them, if you will. I don't make them. I hang the bulbs, and they're smaller. As you go further up the tree, you try to make the little bulbs a little bit smaller. Okay, something like that. Like I said, they don't have to be perfect circles, just more suggestive, if you will. And make this a little bit larger, kind of at the bottom. And you get a pretty good distribution. I need a little something in here. Fill that in. Now, when I decorate a tree, I try to get it somewhat balanced and so forth. Just like if you were doing a painting, like I'm doing a painting of a tree today, but you want to think about how you put the weight. And obviously, if it's a heavier, larger bulb or ornament, those stay at the bottom because the branches at the bottom are larger and stronger to support the weight of some of the things that you may hang on the tree. And so there's a balancing problem, or not a problem, I should say, but something that you have to be aware of, that you try to arrange. And everything that's higher is relatively smaller. You don't want to put some large shape up there that weighs too heavy on the rest of the tree. But so there's a certain amount of thought that goes into how you decorate a tree. At least I think about it. Some people might just at random just start hanging the bulbs. They pick them up out of the box and they hang them every which way. And then all of a sudden, the tree's getting top-heavy with all these larger shapes. So then they have to kind of rearrange, pull some of the larger things and put some of the smaller things up near the top. So it seems like I've always been the one that decorated a tree in my family anyways. My parents used to let me have a run at it, and so I got pretty good at it, and of course in the beginning we used to go out and buy a tree. There used to be a little place on the corner, a little lot, and I don't know what group it was. It could have been an individual that had the trees. I guess they'd bring them down from the north, maybe New Hampshire, Canada, wherever the trees came from, and they'd sell them every year at this lot. And my dad would go along with me, and he'd let me decide which tree I wanted to bring home, and so forth. And now they still do it. They still have trees, real trees, of course, that you can buy, and they cost a lot more. I mean, I back then probably you paid $3, $4, $5, $10, if you will, and now they run around $50 to $80 for a real tree. So everything changed, prices, everything inflated today, anyways. But so what happened when we got married? When we got married a few years back. And one of the gifts that somebody gave us was an artificial tree. And we had that for quite a while until it wore out, putting it together. And then after that, we picked up another one. And from Kmart, which doesn't exist anymore hardly, other than down the Cape. I think there's one left in Hyannis. I know there is one left. My son works there. But we purchased another tree, and that's the one we've had ever since. So we've had, ever since we've been married, we've always had an artificial tree. I'm a little bit allergic to a live tree. I remember when they used to bring a real tree into the house, I used to start sneezing until that smell, that fresh smell of the tree went away. Okay, now I'm going to borrow, I'll use one of these other brushes here. I'm going to try a round one. Let's see. We'll try this one over here. See, haven't used that for a little while. And now I'm going to mix a little bit of blue. If I can find a nice shade of blue here. Okay. Oops, I don't want that. A little bit on the dark side. Okay. So we'll try this one. I use usually two blues. I have a ultramarine blue, and I use a cerulean blue, which is sort of like has a little bit of green in it. And I use that mostly for skies and ocean a lot of time. Okay, now, if we're starting at the bottom, again, I usually put larger shapes in there. You can mix it up a little bit. And, you know, it's just like everything, when you're thinking of a painting, the distribution of color, well, you do the same thing when you decorate a tree, at least I do anyway. You don't put a big clump of all the same in one area. So you kind of jump around a little bit, move around, put a bulb here and there. Tree decorating is it's a sort of has a little bit of an art to it, you know, when you're working, and I have a one of the original well, I guess it's well, it was a little Santa Claus and made out of almost like the wire that they have. And you can bend it up and so forth. And it goes way back. It's one of probably it goes back. I don't dare to say, but you know, 50 years or better. And there you go. Distribution. Now, you can mix, if you want, that's up to you. You can mix smaller bulbs in with the large ones. It doesn't become too serious that the bulbs down low can be smaller, just to break it up a little bit. But for the most part, I usually keep the smaller bulbs kind of working to the top. And anything that's large, I leave it down near the bottom somewhere. Distribution of the color. Okay, here we go. We can put some small little shapes up in here. Now, if this was going to be a real tree, obviously I wouldn't start putting any bulbs on it until I got all the lights on. I mentioned that earlier, and I spiral down with the lights. And then once you get the lights all hooked up and on the tree, I always test it too before I do anything else. Make sure all the sets of lights are working and whatnot. I try to buy sets of lights that if one burns out, the whole thing, you know, won't light. That's the earlier ones that they used to have. Can you imagine years ago putting lit candles on trees? Back then, they had actually little candles, fire lit. And I'm quite sure they must have had a lot of occasion to have to put the fire out, the tree catching on fire. Very, very dangerous to do anything with, you know, using any sort of a light other than the electric. Bulbs used to heat up. The old type, they don't as much now. There's hardly any heat. And of course, I guess that they don't use as much electricity because of that. Let's put a couple of dots up there. You see how that's kind of filling in now? And it's with the least amount of effort, really. It's just a distribution. It's almost putting colored marbles in a jar, you know, and kind of mixing them up type of thing. Now, some of the ornaments, of course, they're bulbs, mostly circular. And then, of course, you can buy all sorts of things. You can get the ones that look like icicles. You can get the ones that you can hang on the tree. They're easy to do. They're like a candy cane, like the shape of a J shape, upside down, candy canes and whatnot. There's all sorts of little ornaments, my gosh, you can put on the tree. And usually they might be commemorative things, you know. I've got some commemorative bulbs that was from, you know, the 250th anniversary of the city or town or whatever. And some of those we still put on the tree. All sorts of bulbs you can put on the tree. Okay, now, I don't know if I want to get into too much else. You can put like little star shapes on there, or you can just keep it like white. Now, we used to have multicolored lights, the sets of lights that we used to put on the tree, multicolored. But over the years, we've just gone to all white. The whole tree, the bulbs on the tree are white. Everything is white. And then you've got enough color by the time you get through with all the ornaments and everything else you're hanging on the tree. You probably don't need to add colored bulbs. And I noticed that a lot of times, even outside lawn decoration now, a lot of the lights are all the same color that they string out and so forth. Now, I don't know if I want to add too much more as far as decorating. I suppose I could put a few, just try a couple of dots of yellow. That could be just a distribution of color in different spots. And like I said, all it is just putting them on. You could use a Q-tip if you don't have a regular paintbrush. Just dip your Q-tip into the paint and put some little dots on the tree. Okay, and it's a matter of just filling in. And I usually end up having to arrange the lights or the ornaments a lot of times because there's some empty spots here and there, and they jump right out at you. You either have not enough lights in that area, or you have nothing, and you have to kind of move the wires around a little bit and make adjustments. And those are sort of the final touches that you put on the tree. Okay, here we go. Distribution. Those yellow specks I'm putting in, they could be almost like the, maybe we'll pretend that they're the light bulbs, maybe. Now, I think a lot of times when you do a painting, especially with watercolor, there's one thing you don't want to do is over decorate it, overdo it. I don't know if you've ever watched the Hallmark shows. Around this time of year, December, they start even earlier in November, they have Christmas stories. And if you see some of the ornaments that they put on the trees, I think in some cases they just overload everything. You can overdo it too. You can get it to the point where it's so much on the tree you don't even see any of the natural green branches of the tree. It looks like they've just packed it with everything. So there's such a thing as overloading. And I know Hallmark, they're in the card business, and they want everything to be overly decorative, if you will. And so I know they spend a lot more time at it than probably most folks would decorate their homes. Although I've seen a lot of places that people will really spend a lot of time decorating. I do have a little village that I set up at home. And we visited one family one time. They had two big, huge tables of displays of the town, and they had all the different buildings, the hardware store, the candy store, the church, the mail, the post office, if you will. All that, they had the whole community. And I do have a few pieces. I have probably a variation of maybe 12 or so, 14 maybe different buildings and whatnot. Now, right at the top of the tree, what we usually have is we put the angel up there. It kind of sits on, like a cone shape, sits on the top of the tree. And so I'm just going to put right up here just a little dot, and I'm going to make something that looks like little arms or the wings, of the angel. So that's that. Now, what I might want to do is come back and just add some more branches. And I can use a darker shade. With the green I had, I can add a little bit more blue into it, or put a little bit of Payne's Gray or something that will darken that color. And I'm using a smaller brush now, and I'm going to come back in and fill in a little bit more of the areas that look like they need it. They need a little bit more filling of the tree itself. Now, why I didn't fill, obviously, the whole tree in at once is because I had to put the color of the ornaments. Now, I do allow a little bit of white to show through, because that could be part of the tree. It's something, like you might have white ornaments or the bulbs themselves that are white. So I'm just kind of filling in at random. I can push the brush out to show some of the detail of the branches a little bit more. See how you fill all that in? So that's coming back and doing the finishing touches. Now, no matter what the subject is when you're painting, especially watercolor, the rules are always basically the same. Start out, save the white where the white would go. You don't usually turn around and use white paint. But just save the white. You got an area that needs to be filled in. You just give it a dab. Now, you could use Q-tips or any other type of thing you want to take, even a paper towel, and put a point on the end of the towel, and you can use that to dab with a little bit. I suppose you could get away using a sponge, too, if you want to use a sponge a lot of times for adding some of the texture. The only problem is with the sponge is that you don't have much control of where it's going to go unless you really cut the sponge a little bit thinner. Here we go, filling in some of that area. And like I said, it's a darker shade. Darker shade. You can pull some of these edges out if you want them to go out like that. So you kind of make it, again, you're balancing. You're balancing the distribution of color. See how that works? See how it's kind of closing in now, it's filling in. And you still want to allow some of the white. if I fill this all in like solid green around everything, it would look very flat and dull. So you want to a lot of times allow some of the white to come through. Now again, no matter what you paint a lot, that's the characteristic of watercolor a lot of times, allowing some of that white paper to come through. It can be transparent, translucent, but it's the paper that's showing through. Here we go down here. Okay. I'm just looking around for some spots where I can get some of the tree in there. There you go. Fill that in. And if the edge doesn't look a little bit bumpier, we could always do something with that, but kind of break it up a little bit more. You can pull some of those branches out like that. Lift up as you go, so it goes from thick to thin. Fill that in. Okay, not looking too bad. A lot of white left in here, so we can kind of work around, fill that in, make it look like some more branches in there. Or what are those on the branches? They call them needles, don't they? That's the thing with a real tree too. If you leave it up too long, it starts to dry out. And boy, do you have a pile of needles to clean out of the rug. I know I used to like to leave the tree up as long as I could. I'd leave it up into February if I could get away with it. Because I always loved the tree. And being the sole, a lot of times the sole person that worked on it, sometimes I'd have a little bit of help here and there. But I was the one that really spent most of the time decorating from this way back when I was, 8 or 10, 9 years old. I was decorating the tree. And I must say that I'm probably pretty good at it, but I'm fussy. I don't, like if somebody wants to hang something, I usually try to be overly helpful and suggest, well, that shape should be down here. It's a little big for up there, and whatnot. And you don't want to put too many things that are the same color together, mix it up. So I'm fussy about that. But, of course, you got to understand, people, if they're trying to help you, they mean well. And so I kind of keep quiet a lot of times about things. Yeah, filling in quite a bit. That's kind of a heavy, solid area, so a lot of times what I do is kind of break that up a little bit more. Dab some color into that, around that. A little bit light in through here, so that could use, again, a little bit of a darker shade of green maybe to fill in there. Now my tree is not as elaborate as the picture I'm looking at. The picture I'm looking at is almost like a photograph. So I'm not apt to spend a lot of time doing that. Now you'll see a little bit of the trunk of the tree, this part that goes down into here, and that goes inside of the stand. And then, like I said, it doesn't have to be overly elaborate. You could take a nice clean bed sheet or something, white maybe. We always used to use a white cloth underneath. And we could put that in. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use a marker, and I'm just going to make the contour of the cloth coming around. That marker's drying up. Let's use one that's got a little bit more ink that will show up. Here you go. And that cloth I used to wrap around the base of the tree, something like this. And then, if you want, you could take your brush, come back here, and just pick up some of the darker color that you may have, and just put some shadows on the material. Another thing you can do is take, you used to buy rolls of cotton, and you could use cotton too, and lay that on top of the white, and that makes it look more like snow. Something like this. It's a little bit on the blue side. I wanted to make it a little darker. Let's see if I can find a darker shade up here. More of a gray or Payne's gray in there. Of course, by the time Christmas morning comes, you don't see the cloth at all. It's just piled in there with all the presents and things. Okay, let's get this little guy out of the way before I knock it over. Okay, down, something like that. Cloth under the tree, okay? And if you want the little angel at the top to show up more, you can just put a darker wash up in here, like you would, the sky sometimes when you're outside. Just paint around that and just fill that in. I leave a little bit of a white around the whole thing. You can do it kind of multicolored. You don't have to be too fancy, but just leave a little bit of an aura around it. Okay, something like this. Go to the edge if you want. And I just put it in. You could even wet the paper, like you'd put a wash on the paper. You can do it that way. And just put like a little bit of color into the wash. Again, keep that little aura around the tree so it shows up a little bit more. There you go. This can be filled in. You can make that around here, whatever the color of the carpet is, if you have a carpet, on the floor there. Sometimes people just have a wood floor, so we have a little bit of both. We have the wood floor with the carpets. Okay, come up the side. Again, you're going to keep that little aura around the tree. And fill it in out to the edge. I usually wet the paper a lot of times. The paint spreads a lot faster and it doesn't get too streaky. Just put water, wet the paper. If you've been with me for a while, you'll know that that's a wash. I put a wash on the paper. And usually I'll start, when I do outdoor paintings, a lot of times I'll do, I always start at the top with the sky and so forth, put that in. Work from the top and then do the bottom and then end up in the middle. And allow the paint to dry. Now, if that gets a little bit too much blue, then you can always kind of take a little bit of your yellow and put yellow into this and wiggle it around, and you can kind of make it sort of a yellowish green, so you can change the color if you want. And of course, the tree itself, when all those lights are lit, it does give off a lot of light around the tree itself. I just like to have all the tree lit. I don't put any lights on in the living room, and I leave all the lights off and just sit there with just the Christmas tree lights on. Very nice, quiet, peaceful, homey type of thing. I heard something on the news that they're selling trees earlier this year, and a lot of people are setting up their trees in the home a lot sooner than they normally do. I'm thinking of doing that myself. Here it is, the 3rd of December, and I'm thinking of doing that myself, setting the tree up earlier this year. You know what it is? I think it has a lot to do with the problems we're having. You know, we've been shut up in the gloom and doom of the virus and all that going on. And I think people want just to kind of pump some little bit more holiday and spirit into their homes. So they're putting up the trees sooner this year. I don't know if that's going to work. You can kind of use those different shades in there. Now, what we do at home, we usually set the tree up with the picture window in the living room, and then you can see it from the road, the street. And so the backdrop here would be the curtains, the backdrop, and you can see the tree from the outside. My uncle and aunt and uncle, they used to have a small tree, and what they do is set this little tree that was only probably 3 or 4 foot tall, and they'd set it up on a table, and it would look like almost a 5 or 6 foot tree from outdoors, you know, from the street, but it would be a tree just on a table. It was kind of a nice idea. Easy to set up because of the size. I think it never had to be taken apart like mine and whatnot. But so that's the way it worked out. Now, like I said, if you don't want the green or the blue, you know, you can kind of put any color you want in there. I think probably you can drop some of that shade into closer to the tree too, so you don't have a hard edge. See how I'm kind of breaking that up a little bit here and there. And but it does give off a little bit of light from the tree. Oh, that's another thing I was going to say, that the bulbs they have today, they give off next to nothing. They don't get too overheated like the old type. And that's the same with any bulb, I guess, that you can buy today. The new bulbs, you know, they don't use so much electricity. Here we go. See how that works? It's a little bit closer to the tree now. But it is going to give off a little bit of light. Kind of look for that at home to see if it does that, what it does around the tree. You get the idea how that works. Kind of jumping back a little bit, we didn't have so much family this year for Thanksgiving. It was just 6 of us, I guess. And the brunt of my family, my oldest boy, he lives in Missouri, and he had 7 children, and now they're all old enough to be married and have their children. So we have great-grandchildren, about 8 great-grandchildren in Missouri already. And but they kind of stayed at home too this year. They didn't all come out. I remember visiting a couple of years ago for around Christmas time, and there was 18 at the table. 18. Oh boy. You know, this year we had to be cut back a little bit. Hopefully things will be better. I believe they will be. Okay, now, see how that kind of works? And you can do some other things in back here underneath the tree. I didn't put any presents down underneath there, but that piece of cloth there, you probably won't see it on Christmas morning. It was covered with presents. I almost said presidents. We've heard enough of those lately, too. Oh, well. Here we go. That's pretty much the idea, how that works. Now, you can spend a lot more time being fussier. You can maybe take, if you want, take a marker. If you want to kind of bring out some of the shapes. What I didn't do today, I didn't blot in there to bring out a little bit of the highlight on the bulbs to make them look, shinier. I didn't spend a lot of time on that today. But you can kind of outline a few little things here and there, add a few textures, whatnot. The only trouble with the markers, you have to make sure the paint's dry. They just don't, they won't work on wet paper. There you go. Now, a little angel up at the top, I kind of lost the shape, but I can put some of that back in. Put a couple of little wings there and a little bit of the shape of the head. Okay. That's that. Break up the edges again. Because you have all those little needles, there's thousands of needles. If you really wanted to do the texture, you'd spend a lot of time. Okay, well, that's about it. Now, what I do is I put a little margin, a border around the picture, and it's kind of like a artificial mat. And of course you can cut or buy an actual mat that you put around your picture. And then frame that. Let's see if I can get some of that tape off. I always have fun with the tape here. Yeah. Now, you see where this is light across the bottom? There's not much of a contrast there, so what I'll probably want to do, you can put the piece of tape back if you want. Take one of the pieces of tape and take a paintbrush now. Now we have a wooden floor and we do have a combination of carpets and wood, but I'm just going to put back just a little bit of the brown floor. Oh boy. We get the paint going here. Yeah. Just put a little bit of that across the bottom. It's kind of, you can actually put it in the back, towards the back wall there. I don't know if I get very brown or not. Try some of that sepia. Yeah, it's a little bit darker. Sometimes you put a color on, you think it's too dark, and by morning, by the time the paper dries out, it's a lot lighter. Yeah, something like that. Get this side over here even. Yeah. Then we'll remove the tape. And you get more of a contrast between the floor and the wall. So that's pretty much it. Probably next week I'll be showing a picture that would be more or less what happens to the trees outside when they collect with snow and so forth. So we'll make a little snow scene for you. Maybe put a church or a building of sort, a little town in there. Okay, so there you go. And thanks for being with us again. And if I don't see you before, have a good, happy Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and whatnot. And but we still have to contend with little problems with the virus. But I think they're starting to come up with some solutions to that, and maybe they'll be able to get everybody vaccinated and get back to being healthy again. Let's see. Yeah. Fit it in over here somewhere. There you go. Okay. So my old saying every time I get through in like sessions, brushes up, and we'll see you again next week, okay? Thank you.